Alto looked up as he headed through the town. The tourists were busy. Locals peddled their wares as customers examined their goods. They bartered and traded, yet their eyes kept drifting to the local attraction. Sitting high above the city, like a mountain, was Jörmungandr, the world serpent. The massive snake sat beneath the sun. Its green and black scales glistened in the morning light. Its massive mouth was wide open, as its tail was shoved inside. Yellow eyes glared down at the village, but it couldn't move. Alto moved up a stairway to get a better look. He paid the small toll, but it was worth it to get a better look. It sat partially buried in the ground, but the real view was its body. It stretched out onto the horizon in each direction. On and on it went with no end. Rain clouds rose from its mouth. Alto picked up his lute as he thought. Could this inspire a song, he wondered? As he did so, the serpent squirmed. The earth trembled and shook. Alto fell to his knees as the earth moved from the beast's incredible demonstration of strength. Screams ran up amongst the tourists, for the fear of the tremendous beast reared up in their minds. Welcome back to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we turn to Norse legend and find a monster that battled the mighty Thor himself, Jörmungandr, the world serpent. Let's see if we can find out why it took a god to bring down such a monster. Jörmungandr is Loki's child, alongside Hel, the goddess of the underworld, and Fenrir, the monstrous wolf. This monstrous serpent stretched out around the world, laying through the oceans, and eventually swallowed its own tail. From its mouth spewed forth a corrosive poison, which would destroy nearly anything. After swallowing its tail, he was bound and unable to move effectively, but when he did, it created earthquakes. For that, it battled its uncle Thor on several occasions. Eventually, they killed each other in Ragnarok. He was so heavy that Thor could only lift a quarter of Jörmungandr up. I'll be honest here, I don't like these uber massive monsters like Jörmungandr, the 4-mile wide Thunderbird, the half-a-mile long Dandan, or the island-sized turtles. Honestly, I think the Trosk at 150 feet tall might be the largest animal it can reach. Jörmungandr is a snake. That is easy. They are real animals, but not at this size. How big is it? What is Earth's circumference? 24,860 miles, or 40,007 kilometers. That is from pole to pole and back. It would be even longer at the equator. I think the poles would be better though, since that takes us closer to the Scandinavian nations, where our creature comes from. Let's round it down since it is partially sunken into the world and under the ocean. So let's say a flat 40,000 kilometers, assuming that it is straight and doesn't bend or curve at all, not counting how much of its tail has been swallowed. Now for height, we can compare it to the green anaconda, which is about 9 meters in length and a diameter of 0.3 meters. Using the 40,000 kilometers, we can estimate it has a height of 133 kilometers. Of course, that is assuming my math isn't wrong, which it could. At that height, it would sink into the earth and ocean very easily. Of course, it could be much more slender, which would make things much easier at that size. Since a snake is roughly cylindrical, we can get its volume, which is 555,716,324 cubic kilometers. At that size, we've got issues, lots of them. To put that into perspective, that means this snake is actually bigger than the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, this is a big guy. The only way to make it work on the Earth would be if it was sunken into the crust, thus making it easier to create earthquakes. This is also why I don't think it has a normal proportions to a regular snake. Much thinner. Let's start moving by innervating the muscles with nerves. This is a major problem. The fastest sensory nerves are 120 meters per second, and motor nerves are 60 meters per second. That's going to be a major problem. That is about 10,368 kilometers per day. For a nerve to go from its tail to its brain in the head, it'll take 3.85 days. But that is just the sense of feeling. In order to react, we'll use the slower velocity at 5,184 kilometers a day, or about 7.71 days. That means if Jörmungandr feels pain from its own bite, it'll be 11.5 days before the muscles can react. That is way too long. If someone started attacking it, you'd have plenty of time to do damage before it can react. That won't work. We need to go much faster. Nerves work on electrical gradient, fastest movements along the myelinated nerves. These are nerves wrapped in a series of Schwann cells, also called myelin. They are separated by an area called the node of Ranvier. The electrical current does what is called a saltatory movement, where it jumps from one node to another. Jörmungandr will need this, but an improved option. One way is to enlarge the nerves. That will let us speed up the nerves some, but not that much, unfortunately. But increasing the electrical power is still dangerous. It runs the risk of burning tissue and making it much more difficult to control and allow for precise movements. What about a light-based nerve system? At just under 300 million meters per second. At this speed, from tail to brain, it'll take under a second. This is usable, even if we have a system which is at 1% efficiency or so. So, we can make it work. We'll need to create a bioluminescent system. Use the photoreceptors similar to the eyes. Complicated at best, but it might be the only way to make it work. Oh, it gets better. Have you ever heard of two-point discrimination? This is the ability to determine the difference between 2 points on the body. The test is fairly simple. Blindfold your subject and gently press the 2 points of calipers into their skin. Start with a small gap and slowly get bigger until your subject can feel 2 points. That isn't important. What is important is finding something sticking you. I'm sure you've had an itch that you can't find, or a small briar in your sock that you can't find but can feel. This will be a problem for Jörmungandr, due to each nerve having to cover a much larger area. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to find the 2 points on a snake due to their lack of ability to speak. But at Jörmungandr's size, we'll be looking at up to miles before it can locate a point. After that, we need to get the muscles going, and that is another issue. We know how strong it is, thankfully. It creates earthquakes. A magnitude 5 is about 2.8 times 10 to the 12 joules. A magnitude 7 is 2.1 times 10 to the 15th joules. So, the megaton levels of TNT level. It's got plenty of power, and to do that, we need muscle, a lot of it. Even with our light-based nerves, it will take a lot of power to get them moving. For muscles to move, they need a few things, such as blood, oxygen, and nutrients. But we need to pump the blood. We need a heart to do it, a big one. But this is where it gets complicated. There is resistance to pushing blood through the body, thus your blood pressure. The more blood we need to move, the more force needed. We are pumping blood thousands of miles. The way to reduce the resistance is increasing the size of the veins and arteries. But they'll need to be big enough to swim through, if not fit a whole submarine through. Yeah, you're going to go overboard on size here. But there is a way to reduce the strain on the heart. That would be to create smaller hearts along the arteries and veins. Another option would be to use the long muscles along its body to generate the movement of blood. Similar to how veins, which rely on the contraction of the muscles in your body to move the blood back to your heart. But what happens when it moves? Try carrying a water balloon, then a bigger one, and one bigger still. It starts sloshing about so much that the water balloon will burst. This is the next problem. This fellow is so big that its blood will be affected by tidal forces. It'll plague every tissue, artery, and vein. I'm sure you felt dizzy at least once when you stood up too fast. That's having blood flow out of your brain just for a second. And a problem here. If Jörmungandr tries to lift its head, all the blood will flow downhill away from it. Either it will pass out or die. We need to stop this. One option lies within the veins. They aren't completely hollow. They have small valves which prevents blood from flowing back down the vein. Putting these through the arteries, lymphatic system, and more in the veins will help. But we'll need much more. Creating thicker walls of blood vessels won't work. Oxygen will need to pass through them. So we'll need to strengthen the tissue walls a lot. More elastic. One option would be to make the tissue walls thicker but increase the capillary vessels. Not a good one, but a possible one. Doubly so when the blood gets moving. We can't have the blood take days to get to the tissue. No. We need the blood to move faster than lightning. Supersonic blood flow. Mach 10 is 11,927 kilometers per hour. So, at Mach 10, it takes about 4 hours from the time the blood is picked up to reach its tail. So, in order to get the blood flow to an hour one way, that would be Mach 34. That will blow out the veins and arteries unless they are heavily reinforced. But if an artery is ever cut open, blood will spray out at a deadly velocity. Escape velocity is 40,270 kilometers per hour. Let that sink in. Its blood is going as fast as a rocket ship needs to escape Earth's atmosphere. We aren't done yet. Jörmungandr needs to breathe. Oxygen comes in the nose or larynx down top of the lungs and out to the blood before the body. And that is the problem. By the time the oxygen gets to the lungs, after miles of travel, it'll be used up. Mixing of new and old air, no good. This first part is easy to fix. We copy birds. They have a unilateral airflow in the lungs. Also, let's move the lungs closer to the mouth to improve ease of breathing and oxygen exchange. Still, this won't be enough. In order to get oxygen along the whole body, it'll take a while. Longer still once it gets to the capillaries. There are other options though. Creating additional lungs and nostrils along its body, or make the skin permeable to oxygen. Or more likely, it's a symbiotic bacterium which produces oxygen spread through its intestines and other tissues. In order to reduce the blood and oxygen demands at the tail, we could reduce the muscle and make most of the tails as tendons, like a bird's feet. Next, we need food. Most snakes can get by with 1 meal a week, but how big does its food need to be? Krakens, thunderbirds, and dragons will only go so far, and are only so common and are rare. I wouldn't be surprised that why it swallowed its own tail is it couldn't find the food to sustain itself. That, and it probably didn't know that it was its own tail. Now, why hasn't its poison destroyed its own tail? Well, its scales probably need to resist its own poison, else it would melt its own face off with every breath. If the same scales are on its tail, that is why it hasn't melted its own tail off yet. Now, we have one more issue. Waste management. A big animal has big dumps, and lots of urine. If Jörmungandr isn't moving, that waste is going to build up. To prevent this from becoming a major health problem, its cloaca will need to be in the ocean to move the waste away. But this isn't the only problem. Moving that much bio-waste through the body will quickly become poisonous. At this insane size, just moving it around is going to be deadly. To reduce this, one option would be to secrete some of it from the skin. This will leave it on the skin and risk infections though, thus moving to dislodge as much as possible, and thus encouraging the earthquakes once more. So, how did Thor defeat this creature? Well, let's be honest. Its scales are thick, and you'll need power to get through. Normal swords, spears, and arrows aren't going to get through, let alone make it notice you. Magic is what you'll need. Serious spells. Not the cutesy little spells like fireballs or ice spears, no. Go with volcano spells, hurricane force storms, and plague spells. Go big. Seriously, I would recommend getting some modern artillery weapons. Maybe a nuke. That is about the only weapons that can harm it. But you can walk up to it and start piling explosives. More and more. Until you choose to detonate them. All while you are at a safe distance. But when you pierce it, the blood will spray forth. If you are caught in it, you'll die. Supersonic blood is going to reach the sky and kill you. The blood can spray into space. Once there is an opening, it'll struggle to clot the wound, with a high risk of bleeding out. Now, while this thing is durable, it isn't fast. It can't move much. It won't dodge attacks. But hard to hurt. When it does, you'll get an earthquake. So, don't be in a building as it moves. Without our light speed nerves, it'll be days before it can react to any attack. Now, you don't need to fight the head. No. Go for the body. The head has a deadly poison which can kill you instantly. Don't fight there. Follow its tail end away and get some distance. Yes. Fight it along the tail and out of line of sight. You'll be safe there. I would like to try a rotting spell on its tissue. A slow way to fight and kill it, yes, but the safest. At that size, it'll take a while. But if you can make it septic, it'll spread and poison the whole creature. This spell will take a lot of work. Now, Thor fought Jörmungandr for the last time when it finally got its tail out of its mouth. That means it was releasing poison. Use a powerful cold spell or wind spell to blow it away. Keep your distance. I can see why Thor would struggle against Jörmungandr, and why I'm giving it a 10 of 10 for difficulty. Its scales are tough, and if it bleeds, the force will be deadly to be caught in. All that assuming you don't get caught in its deadly poison. It can create earthquakes when it moves. If you are fighting it, pick an area far from the head and rely on explosives and modern weapons. Honestly, I think Thor was killed from the poison in the blood spray in the battle. If you manage to kill Jörmungandr, there is an immediate problem. The body will rot long before you can dispatch it. Due to its size, this will be a worldwide effort to divide up the body. If you don't, you'll attract flies, carrion birds, and plagues that will circle the globe. The death toll will be devastating. You can eat all the meat, and you'll need to get used to it, for you'll be eating it for a while. The scales can be used for armor and bones for fortresses. Poison is too dangerous to try using, and will need to be neutralized before even starting on the head. Now, is it worth doing it? That is a fair question. This is a massive snake. Dealing with the remains is a logistical nightmare, and if anyone slacks off, it'll be a natural disaster, and that is likely. Yet, if you leave it alone, you get an occasional earthquake. Those are bad. But are they better than plagues? I'll leave that up to you. But, if you don't kill it, could you make a tourist attraction of it? It is easy to find, and limited on mobility. Yes, you could. Be ready for earthquakes, but you could do that. You could make a nice attraction of it. It'll take a bit of coin to start it, but could pay off. Come and see the head of the world serpent. Come and see a real monster. Alto looked on in horror. Tourists like him dropped to their knees and screamed. Everything shook. Yet the stalls and buildings held firm. The locals braced themselves, but didn't panic. They were used to this. As Jörmungandr grew still, they immediately went back to work. None even gave it a second thought. Right back to business. Alto couldn't understand. He looked at a guide and said, "Aren't you scared it'll attack?" "Ah, no. It happens regularly. Nothing of it. It won't be moving until the fated day. We've got plenty of time." Alto was dumbfounded, but made his way back to the tourist district. He munched on a sweet bun while looking back at the serpent. It was still once more. Shouldering his loot, he moved for the inn and that evening's performance. Jörmungandr is an odd foe. He doesn't move, but is still dangerous. His size makes him an easy target, and hard to hurt safely. His defenses are his best protection. This is a foe worthy of a god's attention. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please come back next week for the Deadly Muse, the Lian Shi. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.